Two particular games have released recently, which have finally pushed me to talk about this. Resident Evil is a franchise known for its sprawling and intricate locations. You could talk to somebody who've casually tipped their toes in this franchise and they'd remember the game by which location you're setting. Oh, Resident Evil 0? Is that the one with the police station or the one with the train? Even if they don't know the exact game, they remember the setting. It left an impression on them. The older games especially are fondly remembered by their attention to detail in those history-rich settings. The haunted rooms of the Spencer Mansion, the cold steel pathways of the Antarctic base in Code Veronica, the sterile look of the RCPD front hall and its bloodied hallways in stark contrast, and even the ravaged streets of Raccoon City. Later games went global and strayed away from these small, focused locations and branched out into big bombastic set-piece-filled areas in Spain, Africa and China. Even then, they managed to fill these huge settings with memorable locations that might stick with you more than you know. From the ancient ruins in Resident Evil 5 and the abandoned Chinese market in Resident Evil 6. Granted, RE6 might be the weakest game from my point, but it still shows that Capcom knew how to integrate memorable locations in an action-packed game. A better look at this is found in the Revelations games that released during this same time, like the Queen Zenobia of the first one and the Soviet island of Revelations 2, whose real name I can't speak out loud without sounding like an idiot. Newer games really brought the franchise back to the top of the survival horror food chain, with many new fans itching, hungry for more horror goodness. Resident Evil 7 made this triumphant return possible, all because they went back to that simple, small and memorable location.
Boo! Where did you find this guy?
Give me a break, Pete.
Hey, I only work with professionals. Speaking of which, make sure the sound is right this time. I don't want a repeat of Amarillo.
That was 2 fucking years ago.
I don't do ADR.
The Baker Ranch in Dulvey, Louisiana. A small rundown ranch in the swamps of America, where the player is terrorized by goopy mold monsters and a crazed all-American family.
Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, he's not eating it, Jack! He's not eating it!
Shut the hell up, Marguerite!
Nathan, for him!
Get the hell out of here!
You're a son of a bitch! Oh, give
Not only did Resident Evil 7 bring back the slow-paced survival horror mechanics that the fans love and the franchise was known for, it brought back an interesting and focused locale that you slowly unravel as you explore, until it completely jumps the moldy shark and starts blasting you through yet another forgettable ship. But we're here to think positive thoughts. I bet you could completely map out the entire Baker estate in your mind if you've played through Resident Evil 7 at least once. It's just top-notch level design. The Baker estate is fascinating and filled with little clues about what happened to the Bakers before they turned into the Evil Dead Deadites. With each area paying homage to classic horror movies, the main house being inspired by things like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Evil Dead.
That's not groovy.
The rancid bug-infested guest house oozes the body horror genre, and the barn is clearly inspired by the Saw movies. All these interesting little details increase the overall character of the location and your experience with the game. Not only will you remember Jack, Marguerite and Lucas Baker, but their home and the history of the environment will stay with you more than you might even realize at first. After the huge success of Resident Evil 7, Capcom graced us with a phenomenal remake of the fan-favorite Resident Evil 2, in which players could once again explore the detailed Raccoon City police station, a former art museum repurposed by the police department. The building is extremely fascinating and strange. I guess the art museum explanation is a fun way to explain why an American police department has such a bonker layout, though it serves to give the location way more character than any of the areas that follow during your game. Now, as of writing this video, 2 weeks ago, Capcom released their new title. Resident Evil 4 has always been one of my favorite games. It's an insane adventure with non-stop memorable moments and interesting characters, from the quippy Leon and the suave Luis Serra, to the creepy Ramon Salazar and the mysterious Ada Wong. The game has no shortage of amazing characters that won over the hearts of many people over the years since its original release back in 2005.
Are you out of your mind?
I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt.
You...
More than that, however, the rundown religious Spanish village, the cultist-infested castle, and even the militarized island of the coast made me realize that even though Resident Evil 4 is the complete action-packed package, the location has always been a huge point of interest for me. The village is vast and hostile. Orange hues bleed together with the barbarity of the chainsaw-wielding Dr. Salvador.
You could be kidding me.
The main village is the perfect start to an action horror video game. From the placements of the small houses to the looming tower, surviving in this area is a highlight not only brought by the dangerous mob, but also by the strange locale. Rotten pastures and abandoned buildings surrounded by a hostile forest bring the series' staple horror ambience to the outdoors. When night falls, the village turns grim and frightening. When the thing-like Las Plagas reveal themselves, painting the screen with Lovecraftian tentacles and Carpenter-like visual horror, darkness takes over the main color palette, and your only way to safety is illuminated by the torches of the brainwashed mob. The castle, filled with crazed cultists, is lavish and intricate. Cult insignias which were littered around the village are now front and center on every banner and shield. Gone are the chainsaw-wielding madmen, replaced with animated suits of armor and chanting fanatics. Scenery switched from grand water rooms and vast courtyards to dark dungeons. Below are caverns filled with pesky insects and village ganados slaving away in mines. The grandeur of the architecture of the castle stands in contrast with the degeneracy of the lost Illuminados cult. The final part of the game, on the island, is metallic and filthy. The ganados here are at their most deadly, with advanced weaponry, traps and searchlights littered around the area. Inside the compound are more disgusting man-made abominations and abandoned laboratories. Even in this action-focused part of the game, you can find small hints of how this place came to be. It looked like the cult drove away or converted factory workers and office employees as you travel through the island. The ruins in which you fight Krauser look and feel ancient and hint at a longer existence beyond what you first imagined. And the area where you fight Osmond Saddler is just my favorite final boss area ever. It's just dripping with style. The remake takes all these elements and just heavily improves upon it all. Not only updating the gameplay for the new generation, changing the flow of the story and making every moment pop, but also tuning each area with more polish, shine and history. A good example is the added lore to the final island part of the game. As the cult has been driven away by old Salazar Castellans in the past, it turns out that they hid and bided their time on this island, hinted at by old settler family tombstones and ancient churches. Now the island feels way more connected to the first two locations, adding to the overall character and vibe of the whole game. Some areas change their overall color palette as well. The village, for example, isn't filled with orange hues anymore, but changed it up for a more realistic look at an old rundown Spanish pueblo. It also goes as far as to change up each visit to the main village area. While in the original, each revisit plays out rather samely, ganados try to get at you while you make your way to another exit. Only the third time around it's night and you've got Ashley with you. The remake throws a complete curveball your way and blows up the big tower during your second visit. Which falls flat in the middle of the village square, forcing you to find another way to the exit. On the third visit, at night and with Ashley, the ruins of the tower completely block the route you would have taken in the original game. These are just some small examples how the remake uses iconic locations and your knowledge of them against you. It's brilliant. Sometimes you'll just walk into a room realizing that you've been there before in reverse order in the original. It's phenomenal how well they translated the game for the new generation, with all these new updates to gameplay, pacing and overall graphics, keeping what works but changing it up, even for long-time fans. I could make a whole video just absolutely gushing over this perfect remake. If only I could play more faithful remade action survival horror games with an absolutely killer locale. I sincerely hope that the well-deserved and overwhelming praise for the phenomenal Resident Evil 4 remake do not overshadow this absolutely shining, necrotic diamond. Dead Space Remake is stunning. The grimy metallic corridors of the USG Ishimura have never felt more alive. Every section of the ship is extremely unique and detailed. None of these areas feel or look the same. The Ishimura is a giant rusty spaceship, a planet cracker on its way to retirement, filled with interesting and different environments. The entire ship feels lived in. Even if you remove all the audio logs, it feels like a real location where people could have been working. From the bridge to the ore storage, each separate section is fully explored throughout your visit, which gives you a good feeling how the ship would operate if it wasn't dealing with a necromorph problem. As you arrive, half of the Ishimura is in the red, which is very coincidental as you're playing as Isaac Clarke, a top of their field engineer, here for more than just everyday business. Not only does the USG Ishimura make for a cool location to set a story in, it makes sense for the player to visit every section and fix all the sabotage systems. Your companions Hammond and Kendra will update Isaac on the regular with new developments.
There's a broken tram car blocking the tunnel. It's gridlocked the system.
Find the captain's body and get his rig.
But the ADS is offline. I've got the system readouts here.
Hammond, the Ishimura's in rough shape. A couple of bad strikes could finish her off.
Shit.
These tasks may look mundane on paper, but it's a genius way for the player to fully familiarize with the ship and its systems, and are far from mundane. As per classic survival horror formula, there will be a lot of backtracking. The Ishimura slowly opens up to the player and some areas will be visited more than once. For example, during the second chapter, Intensive Care, Isaac is tasked with finding the ship's deceased captain, whose body is located in the morgue. You find the morgue entrance barricaded and must figure out a way to break it open, driving the player to fully explore the medical deck. In a later chapter, Chapter 5 Lethal Devotion, Isaac is lured back into medical. Upon his return, the deck has been completely transformed. Flesh-like growth is seen more prominent and the entire deck is littered with candles. Returning to this area doesn't feel like a slog and shows the player that the location lives even without Isaac's presence. My favorite part in the remake is during one of its final chapters, Chapter 11, Alternate Solutions. This is your last chapter on the Ishimura, and it really shows. The whole ship is open for the player to explore, and it's an absolute nightmare to do so. Alarms are echoing throughout the hallways, necromorphs are popping up literally everywhere, and the whole ship is constantly shaking.
Multiple system failures detected. Unable to reroute critical functions.
This chapter might be one of the shortest in the game, because you really only need to escort a death stone to a small passenger ship. The game doesn't even ask you to go back to all its different locations once more. It's optional, but I highly recommend doing so. Go open some extra containers with your master override key or something and just soak in the genius that is the Ishimura right before its demise. When leaving the Planet Cracker vessel, you'll leave knowing every nook and cranny, and it's just really one of the best locations ever made in a horror video game.
Cash up front. This I like. The water needs turning on and those toilets need flushing.
Not all these locations need to be from a horror game though.
Water, gas, and power. Coming out of your cut. You're a real agency now.
A lot of game developers know the importance of environmental storytelling. It's the art of placing certain objects in your game world so that they may suggest a story to the player. It gives a location a ton of character and enhances the overall player experience within it. Players will feel a sense of gratification when they stumble upon a scene in which they themselves created a narrative of what could have transpired there. This is mostly done in a ravaged or abandoned area. Locations with a history. One of my favorite of these locations isn't even from a horror game. I actively replay this game often just to go back to that one locale. I'm talking about the mythical pirate utopia of Libertalia from Uncharted 4: Thief's End. The Uncharted games are no stranger to interesting, forgotten locales. I mean, the whole driving force of these games is finding these lost cities. El Dorado, Shambhala, a Realm of the Pillars, none of these locations come close to the masterstroke in environmental storytelling done in Naughty Dog's 4th installment. During the first half of the game, you unravel more and more about Libertalia's creation as you visit breathtaking vistas in Cuba, Italy, Scotland, and Madagascar, until you finally arrive there. Libertalia is absolutely beautiful, filled to the brim with history. Each individual building has a story to tell. A tavern with traces of life, seemingly abandoned ages ago. A huge lavish bank building with ancient battlefields littered with skeletons, some wearing common clothes and some wearing armor. A big wooden crane which you hang off of while shooting at bad guys. Previously used to transport materials to a crown jewel of the island, New Devon, where the pirate lords built their huge lavish mansions, now all rotten and drowned. Leaving Libertalia feels bittersweet. You've spent the entire game unraveling in its mystery and history. Actually arriving there and seeing everything you've read about is just unbelievably cool. While there, you uncover more about what happened there and start to see a whole cast of characters play out a story. You walk and climb and shoot and jump through it all, and leaving it just feels sad. I think Libertalia is Uncharted 4's best character. It keeps me coming back to a game, to the point that I start to be able to hear Nathan and Sam's conversations sleeping.
I wish. Elena filmed some of it, but the camera didn't make it.
That's too bad.
I have some drawings, though. When we get back, I can show you.
You have drawings? What, are they up on the fridge or something?
No, they're good drawings.
I can't wait.
Even in a game with so many in-depth and well-written characters, Nathan, Sam, and Rafe struggle with letting go. Their obsessive nature with treasure and adventure reflects in the pirates whose history you uncover.
Two and Avery turned on each other.
Are you really surprised?
I guess not.
Nathan, who has learned to let go in the past, but is thrown back in after missing that allure. Sam desperately wants to catch up on time lost, and is obsessed with finding this treasure even if it may cost him his life. Rafe, who can't stand living in the shadow of better people his entire life, unrelentingly wanting glory and recognition for himself. Even with those extremely well-written characters, for me Libertalia and its cast of pirate lords is by far the best thing about the game.
And they all take a swig. Except these two. And just like that, all the treasure of Libertalia becomes the sole possession of two men. These are some of history's greatest pirates, and they all perished in an instant at this very table.
The environmental storytelling is off the charts in this entire final part of the game, that it just keeps sending me back to replay it, only to see that dawn again on that beautiful crafted digital location.
Now what? That should hold. Let's hope.
Maybe this is why Resident Evil and most of the survival horror genre is so endlessly replayable. Because of my love for Libertalia, I revisit a linear single-player story game with little to no variation each playthrough, purely to re-experience my visit to that utopia once more. Sure, I can crank up the difficulty, give myself some handicaps, but that's not why I keep coming back. Survival horror games have always been built around multiple playthroughs and revisits. Most of these games give you a rank based on how fast you were, how many times you've healed yourself, how many enemies you killed, and other insane requirements. The developers know a lot of people will revisit their games and locales, so why not make them want to revisit them? Give the players something to look forward to on their next revisit. Create interesting and detailed surroundings, like the lavish rooms in Salazar's castle. Show them fascinating tidbits that they've missed on their first visit to the haunted halls of the Spencer Mansion. Make them excited and dread their next ride on the Ecliptic Express. Let the player remember their favorite moments cutting up necromorphs in the USG Ishimura. Make them recall their first check-in at the Lakeview Hotel. Encourage them to explore the depths of Rapture again, and challenge them to make it through the horror and see the dawn once more. Make them miss their favorite character. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your favorite location is in the comments below, and maybe I'll see you next time.